When the power died, the house exhaled. Appliances clicked off, the hallway went hollow, and somewhere behind the drywall, a relay made a final tiny sound like a fingernail tapping glass. I was left with rain, my breath, and the discovery I had been avoiding. If you're listening in the dark, keep a light nearby. This one lives in the quiet corners. If you want more stories like this, subscribe and share. Then check the doors. The blackout started a little after 9. It had been storming all afternoon, the kind of rain that pulls a gray sheet over the street and leaves every window sweating. I was in the kitchen rinsing rice, watching the microwave clock count down for no real reason, when the digits flattened to nothing and the room fell into a softer shape. I stood there with the faucet running, feeling the silliness of how much I relied on that faint electric hum. I don't like silence in this house. It isn't haunted, I don't believe in that, but the walls are old and honest. They tell you what you don't want to hear. "Daniel?" I called toward the hallway, even though I knew he wasn't home yet. He'd texted an hour earlier. "Grid's unstable. Late night. Don't wait up." He works on the electrical crew that maintains our town's substations and lines, the kind of job that collects gratitude when the lights come back and blame when they don't. He loves it, or he says he does. He loves being needed. I shut off the faucet. The kitchen window was fogged, and the rain behind it looked farther away than it was. I lit a candle, the cheap paraffin kind in a jar, and the little flame made the darkness more visible somehow. On the counter, my phone was a glossy brick. 2% battery I'd ignored all day. The chargers were dead sockets. I cupped the phone like it would wake if I warmed it. It didn't. Flashlight, I thought. There was one in the coat closet, I was sure. I set the candle on a plate and carried it to the hallway, where the framed prints on the wall leaned into their own reflections. Every sound was bigger. The rain on the porch roof, my bare feet on old boards, the tiny slide of the closet door. The flashlight wasn't where I expected. I rummaged among scarves and a rolled yoga mat and a plastic bag with extra picture hooks, feeling like I was touching the dark instead of objects. My hand landed on a shoebox with its lid taped, then another box under that, metal, heavier, with a cheap luggage lock catching the waxy light. The lock was the color of old nickels. On the top, between two shallow scratches, was a sticker that once read "paperwork," but the letters were half rubbed away. We keep our boring documents in a fireproof safe upstairs. This box wasn't part of that system. I knew the feel of Daniel's tape and labels. This was not that. My stomach made a slow, unwelcome motion, like a small boat crossing a wake. I told myself I'd put it back. I told myself the flashlight mattered more. But the power was out, and the house felt like an emptied theater waiting for applause that wouldn't come, and I was standing there with a candle, and there was a locked box with my name on it, even if my name wasn't on it. So I carried it to the dining table and set it down like a new guest. The lock was a 3-digit dial, the hardware store kind that opens for any patient teenager. I tried our anniversary first, then his birthday, then my birthday, the candle flickering whenever I breathed too close. On the 4th try, I won't say the numbers because they're still in my hands, the latch gave with a small admitting click. The sound was horrible. I was suddenly aware of the wet of my socks, the rice in the pot swelling in cold water, the smell of blown-out ozone that had drifted in when the fridge surrendered. Inside, keys. A fan of them on a ring, each with a masking tape flag and a street name in Daniel's blunt handwriting. Orchard, Lakeview, Plum, Tulip, Azalea. Our town loves its botanical names. There was a stack of Polaroids, a thick rubber band around them, a folded map of our area with red dots pricked into intersections, 2 old phones, the prepaid kind from a brand I hadn't seen in years, a digital voice recorder the size of a chocolate bar with its own little USB cable coiled neat, and beside it a cassette tape in a plastic case labeled in black marker, Quiet Hours. The first thought I had was trivial. Why cassette? Who even owns a cassette recorder? The second thought I'm not proud of. I felt relief that there weren't photos of a woman. That's what wives are trained by the culture to expect, apparently. Gloss, perfume, text threads, not keys, not maps, not a tape that sounded like a warning by its title alone. I picked up the Polaroids and angled them toward the candle. They were all of rooms. Unremarkable rooms. Living rooms with TV stands and tooth-marked coffee tables, bedrooms with sheets thrown back and closets slightly ajar. No faces, no names. Every photo had that creamy Polaroid border with the date scrawled at the bottom in pencil, as if even the ink had to be gentle. The dates ran back 3 years. A lot of them were at night. In one, a kitchen window was glazed with breath from the inside, the same fogged, tired look as mine. I put the pictures down because my fingers had started to shake. Then I picked them up again because I needed to know if any of these were our rooms, humiliated by the lens. They weren't. But the homes felt like ours in the way only houses in the same town can. Same trim, same builder's economy. The same sense that whoever designed them thought people were only their furniture. I checked the phones. Dead, of course. The recorder, though, when I slid the tiny switch, blinked an orange dot at me like a cautious animal. No, like a cautious machine. I promised myself not to turn this into superstition. I put it down. The storm leaned against the siding. Somewhere a neighbor tried their generator, and the sound coughed into stillness. I imagined Daniel's truck nosing along streets drained of streetlights, his hazard flashers a little glowing heartbeat. I imagined him in a reflective jacket, known by every cop and crossing guard and gas station clerk. That's where my mind went, to the public shape of him. It took effort to bend it back toward the private. There's a second lockbox in our bedroom closet, hidden behind my winter coats holding passports and an ugly heirloom bracelet I don't wear. I pulled on a sweater and took the metal box upstairs, balancing the candle on the top step to free my hands. I felt ridiculous for worrying about dripping wax with everything else open on the table downstairs like a confession. In the bedroom, I shut the door, as if that would trap the power outside, and I put the box on the rug and sat on the floor the way I used to sit when everything important happened on the floor. Homework, fights with my mother, or packing to leave for college. I put the recorder in my palm and pressed play. Static first. Then a voice that was undeniably Daniel's but smaller, crushed a little by the cheap microphone. 2331, he said, which is how he always says times, military, like minutes or a formation he can command. Lakeview, porch light out, back doors keyed AL10. A pause, then a door's breath, the soft, terrible private sound a house makes when it accepts you. Then his voice again, low, close to the mic. No alarm. My heart did a clumsy thing that I refused to develop into metaphor. I paused the recording, and the silence swelled like something alive. I pressed play again. Footsteps, the hush of carpet, the soft clink of keys grazing a belt buckle, which I recognized because sometimes at night when he turned in bed, the ring in his jeans on the chair would say something metal in private to the dark. Living room. TV standby light is out tonight. Power company said rolling outages, but it's city-wide. A whisper I couldn't catch. The sound of a drawer, then another. Photographing, he said, and the Polaroids on the dining table became heavier, without being anywhere near me. Bedroom. Occupant absent. Occupant absent. The words were chosen to be professional, antiseptic, but they vibrated with what they were hiding.
He was in someone's bedroom. He was making a list of their absence. He wasn't there to fix anything. I stopped the recording again. I held the device in both hands like it could calm if I did. I looked at the closet and at the small row of his shoes, not the work boots, those were in the garage, usually carrying a collar of dried mud like a ruff. The shoes he wore on weekends to jazz up errands. He was two people in small ways, I knew that. People are. But this felt like a costume inside a costume. I pressed play. Photos stored, he said. Kitchen window has condensation. Clock on microwave blank. Good. Quiet hours. Quiet hours. The tape. The title. It wasn't a warning. It was a routine. Footsteps again. The soft electric hiccup of a GFCI outlet being tested. He said, "No pets," and I swallowed the urge to cry because even the word pets felt like an intrusion. He said, "Take nothing. Leave keys with originals." It wasn't theft, or it wasn't mostly theft. It was what? Surveillance? Ritual? Proof of access? That seemed worse. At least theft acknowledges desire. This acknowledged control.
I stopped the recorder and set it gently on the rug. The room tilted. I had never fainted in my life, and I wasn't going to start now, not because of a voice I knew better than my own. I wanted my phone to text someone, to anchor this in contact, but the battery had sighed and died on the counter, and the power was out like an answered prayer turned inside out. I went back downstairs, the candle flame throwing its own timid weather around the stairwell, and I laid everything out again like a coroner making an inventory. Keys, phones, Polaroids, map, tape, recorder, questions. Why the keys? Practice, trophies, insurance. Why the phones? To never text me from his? To talk to people who live in the dark? Why the map? Dots collected like freckles. Pretty if you pretend their blood supply is art. I unfolded the map and brought it near the candle. The dots weren't random. They made a rough circle around our house, then another outer ring. You could mistake it for a pattern of where storms had knocked out power the worst, unless you also had a drawer full of Polaroids of the rooms inside those dots. I took one of the Polaroids at random and squinted at the date. Early February, last year. A familiar ache in my chest. Were we together that night? Was I asleep knowing nothing, or was I on the couch, mad about something I can't even name now? The writing, again, was careful, as if being delicate could erase what it labeled. Thunder rolled over us like a slow truck. The candle guttered, then recovered. I heard a vehicle go by and stop outside. I lifted the blind with one finger. Daniel's truck, idling. His outline in the driver's seat, face lit by the glow of something I couldn't see, a dashboard diagnostic, a flashlight, a small, bright lie. I packed the contents back into the box in a hurry that felt like cowardice and also like strategy. I didn't lock it. I slid the box under the table, shoved the Polaroids into the sideboard drawer, and wiped a thumbprint off the recorder like that would reverse time. Then I blew out the candle and stood in the dark with my hand on the edge of the table, letting my eyes adjust, letting the house come back. The front door opened. He called my name the way people call a dog they don't own. "Claire?" "In here," I said, and my voice came out normal. I didn't know it could. He set his flashlight beam ahead of him like a scout and found me by the dining table. The light climbed my forearms, turned my sweater into texture. He clipped the flashlight under his arm so the beam could point at the ceiling and make a false sun. "The grid's a mess. They're doing rolling cuts to keep the load from crashing the whole district." "Quiet hours," I said before I could think, and his face did a small thing, Nothing dramatic, just the tiniest tightening around the mouth, like a stitch pulling. If I hadn't just listened to his voice counting rooms, I might have missed it. What? Nothing. I held up my dead phone like a talisman, and you didn't bring a charger that doesn't need a wall, did you? He smiled. It looked like his usual smile, but a millimeter thinner. Car, he said. Grab your jacket. The rain was a chill whisper on our faces as we walked to the truck. In the cab, he plugged my phone into the USB, and the screen woke like an animal startled. I watched the numbers climb. I also watched his hands. Clean, nails trimmed, no blisters. The sleeves of his jacket smelled faintly of damp insulation and that sweet plasticky scent of new electrical tape. The keys on his ring tapped each other, a small familiar bell. You okay? He asked, like I was the one who'd changed something. Just, the house feels different when it's dark. Most people like the quiet. And then, casually, too casually, were you looking for a flashlight earlier? I thought I heard doors. I was. I didn't find one, I said, and my phone hit 8% and I opened messages and typed, "Are you awake?" to Mariah, my coworker who stays up to watch bad reality shows and make critical notes. I didn't send it. I typed, "If something bad happened and I needed you to come over, would you come?" I didn't send that either. Instead, I opened the emergency text service I'd read about once and typed, "Suspicious activity. I need an officer. Not urgent. Please don't use sirens." Then our address. My thumb hovered. I hit send. The moment after I sent it felt like stepping off a curb you thought was flat. We sat there while rain collected in the windshield creases. Daniel watched the house like it might say something. I should head back. You good? I'm good, I lied, and picked up the flashlight from the cup holder and turned it over like I was reading the brand. Can I keep this tonight? Sure. He smiled. He smiled again. He kissed my temple, soft, like a real husband in a photograph. I wanted to peel my skin back and check the wiring.
He left the truck idling until I shut the door. Back inside, the house was both too silent and too loud. I went to the sideboard and pulled the box out again because I couldn't pretend it wasn't here. I tried to think like him, to line up the motives like batteries. There was one thing I hadn't looked at. In the bottom of the box, under the folded map, a small stack of index cards held with a binder clip. Each card had a street name in the top left and a date in the top right, and a column under that, entry/no entry, alarm, notes. Azalea, 0614, entry, alarm, none, notes, pictures taken. Orchard, 0203, no entry, alarm, armed, notes, motion at 2247, aborted. Plum, 1108, entry, alarm, expired, notes, child's room. I stopped. I swallowed. The card after those was blank except for the top line. Waverly, 09/our street. This month. The date unfinished, like an intake of breath that didn't release. The knock at the door wasn't loud. Not police. Not the weight of authority. A neighbor, maybe. I took the flashlight and went to the peephole. 2 officers stood under the eave, rain silvering their shoulders. One had a small battery lantern. They looked like a painting of help. I opened the door, and the officer with the lantern held up his free hand in a gesture meant to signal calm in any language. I told them everything I could, without filling it with the drama I didn't want to believe I was capable of. Keys, photos, dates, the tape, the map. They listened the way good nurses listen, like you are the first person to ever say any of these things, and also like you are exactly the 1,000th. One of them asked me to sit, then to play the recording. I did. He closed his eyes while Daniel's voice walked through other people's rooms like hearing made seeing easier. The other officer photographed the items on the table the way the Polaroid camera had photographed those rooms. Careful, still. A patrol car rolled up without lights. They didn't arrest him right away. They called his supervisor, and his supervisor called someone else. This is a small town. Everything intersects. But they did ask where he might be now. I told them he'd said, "back to the grid," and the phrase felt far stupider in my mouth than it had in his. When they left, I sat with the recorder still warm in my palm, listening to the house settle around me. The officers had been kind, but kindness doesn't remove residue. I felt labeled, not victim, something less tidy, occupant, aware. After midnight, a text arrived from an unfamiliar number. On our way to check a report. Stay inside. Keep doors locked. The area code was local. The signature, if it was a signature, was a simple dash, and then J. I slept the way people sleep on airplanes, equipped with the pose but not the mercy. In the thin morning, I found a message I didn't want. He's been detained for questioning. Please don't share this yet. From J. I could end this here and you'd understand. He did things he shouldn't. He used the map in his head of our town's arteries and the trust that came with his job to slip into houses during calculated dark. He told himself a story about it that made him the careful one, who didn't steal, who left the keys neatly where he found them, who only took pictures. He called the hours quiet, and it turned out he meant everyone else's. Later, when the power was back and the microwave clock blinked 12 o'clock in a stutter, I listened to the rest of the tape. It didn't escalate into confession. It stayed what it was. A manual read to oneself. Keys, doors, notes. Once, very late, his voice softened at a framed photo in a stranger's hall. He said, "They look happy." He whispered, and I had to press my hand to my mouth because I understood then that this was how he fed something in himself without admitting it hunger. On the last index card, behind the blank one for our street, there was a smaller one, half-size, clipped to it. It had only 2 words, rushed, his handwriting gone sideways. If needed. Under that, our address. Under that, my name. I don't know what it meant. Insurance? A lever against me if I discovered him? A promise to himself that he wouldn't keep? The card lived for a week in the back of my underwear drawer until I burned it in the sink in bright legal daylight with the window open and the fan on. People asked me later what the worst part was. Not the recording, not the keys, not the map or the Polaroids or the officer's careful eyes when he asked me about dates and times and arguments we'd had around them. It was the tape's title, Quiet Hours. As if quiet is a good in itself, as if silence is what we're all supposed to strive for, as if paying attention to someone else's life from the safest edges is in any way love. He wasn't a monster. I refuse that word because it lets him off the hook. He was a man who liked to be necessary, who figured out how to make other people unlit so he could move cleanly through them. He chose that. He will have to live in a world where the lights don't do what he tells them anymore. As for me, I sleep with a small crank flashlight on my nightstand now. When it whirs as I charge it, the sound is ugly and practical and blessedly honest. On certain wet nights when the street lamps smear themselves into the rain, I'll turn off every switch and stand still and listen. Not for footsteps, for the house, for the real quiet that isn't curated by anyone's hand.
The lights went out at 8:41 p.m. The TV cut to black, the router died, and the windows fogged in seconds. My phone buzzed once before it went dark too. A second later, my landline rang in the quiet. If you're hearing this during a blackout, keep a flashlight close. For more stories like this, subscribe and share, then double-check your doors. My name is Lauren. We live on Main Street, a row of small, square houses with the same floor plans and mismatched mailboxes. My husband, Evan, was out on another late shift. He said the project at his firm had reached the kind of deadline that turns night into work hours. He is a systems analyst. He speaks in neat bullet points. He likes plans. I used to think that meant safety. It had been raining all day. Not hard, just steady enough to smear the sidewalks and keep people home. When the power cut, everything got very quiet very fast. I stood in the living room with the blanket still on my lap and listened to the refrigerator stop. I could hear water moving in the gutters. It was cold enough outside that each window turned to a dull mirror with breath marks. Then the landline rang. We keep it for emergencies, and because Evan insists it is reliable when the grid stutters. I picked up. "Mrs. Hart?" a woman asked. Calm voice, professional. "This is dispatch. Are you safe to speak?" "Yes." I stood up and walked to the hallway to be away from the windows. "What's going on?" "We've received multiple emergency calls tonight, originating from numbers registered to an Evan Hart," she said. "Several referenced your address. We are sending officers to make contact. Please stay inside. Do not open the door to anyone without identification." "My husband?" I said. "Evan called you? He's at work." A small pause. "We'll speak more when officers arrive, ma'am. Keep your phone close." The line clicked off. I stood there, looking at the silent handset like it would change its mind and say more. The house was dark, except for the thin spill of street light through the fogged glass. I went to the kitchen drawer, found the flashlight, and turned it on. The beam showed dust in the air and the flat face of the dead microwave clock. I placed 2 candles on plates and lit them. The flames made small bowls of light and left the corners in shadow. I texted Evan. "Power's out. Dispatch just called me about you. Are you okay?" 3 dots appeared and vanished. Then nothing. I tried to call. Straight to voicemail. At 8:55 p.m., there was a soft knock. Not a pounding, a measured knock. I went to the peephole. 2 officers stood on the porch in rain jackets, hoods down, faces clear. No flashing lights. One held a small battery lantern and lifted her badge to the peephole without being asked. I opened the door on the chain first. The cold came in around the edge. "Dispatch called me," I said. "Good evening, ma'am. I'm Officer James. This is Officer Patel. May we step inside?" I let them in. The lantern made the living room look staged, like a model home, clean and a little empty. Officer James set the lantern on the coffee table and took out a small notebook. Patel watched the windows, then the hallway, then the front door. Every move was deliberate. It calmed me. "Is anyone else home?" she asked. "No. My husband is supposed to be at work." "We received a series of emergency calls tonight from prepaid numbers registered to an Evan Hart," she said. "Some were hang-ups. Some were reports of gas smells, power surges, or a person heard inside the address. They were spaced in regular intervals over the past 12 weeks, usually between 8 and midnight. Some of them pinged from near this house. I felt my back touch the edge of the bookshelf. I don't understand." "Do you have any smart devices tied to your power or security? Smart breakers, plugs, cameras?" "I have a basic alarm," I said. "Window sensors, a doorbell camera." Evan said smart breakers were a gimmick. Patel walked to the doorbell. "Power's out," he said softly. "Camera's dark. Where's your breaker panel?" "In the basement, by the laundry." "Would you mind if we look?" James asked. "We won't touch anything without your permission." We went down together. The stairs creaked. The flashlight beam made a tight circle on the steps. The air in the basement was cooler. The panel was on the wall past the washer, behind a shallow metal shelf that Evan had pushed close to keep Claire out of sight. I moved the shelf aside. The panel door opened with a simple latch. James played her lantern over the breakers.
Each row was labeled in Evan's neat block letters: living room, kitchen, bedroom, garage. There was a small gray device mounted below the panel. It had a thin antenna and a green LED that wasn't lit with the power down. A sticker on it said Grid Link Relay. I had never seen it before. "What's that?" I asked. Patel leaned closer. "Remote relay," he said. "Controls circuits by wireless command. Common in industrial setups. Sometimes used for load testing at home." He pointed to 2 pencil marks on the drywall. "This was installed recently." James looked at me. "Did you give permission for this to be installed?" "No," I said. "I didn't even know what it is."
Next to the relay, fixed to the concrete with 2 screws, there was a small metal box, the kind that holds a DVR. A cable ran from it toward the ceiling. Patel followed the cable with the flashlight, then paused. "Camera," he said. He pointed at a small black dome tucked into the joists. It faced the laundry area. Another cable split off toward the stairs. He moved the beam. "Second camera on the stairwell. Both are powered over Ethernet. The router upstairs is dead because of the outage, so nothing's recording now." "We'd like to keep looking," James said. "Only where you allow." "Look," I said. My voice surprised me. It was flatter than I felt. "Please look." Patel checked the wall behind the paneling. He pressed a seam in the paneling that didn't match the others. It clicked. A narrow door opened on a shallow cavity between studs. There was a small desk inside, a folding chair, a surge protector with everything dark, a row of prepaid phones lined up in a plastic drawer, a binder with a label across the spine, drills. On the wall, a regular paper map of our neighborhood with lines drawn in pencil. Small notes in the margins. 8:43, lantern knock. 9:10, second pass. Alarm delay, 60 seconds. James put on gloves before touching the binder. She set it on the washer, opened to the first page, and moved the lantern closer. The page had a date in the top right corner. In the top left, scenario, power outage. Below that, subject, L. Hart. Then a list of times and entries. 20:41, main power off. 20:42, subject calls out, no answer in house. 20:45, candles in living room and kitchen. 20:48, front window, checked. 20:52, subject locks back door. 21:05, subject sits on couch, TV remote in hand, waits. Each line had a small comment in neat handwriting, no emotion, just notes. There were pages for other nights. Scenario, false gas odor. Scenario, unknown noise in yard. Scenario, doorbell press with no one visible. Some entries mentioned response time. Some noted dispatch call placed at 21:10. Others had no call, subject stayed put. James didn't say anything for a full minute. She just turned pages. I didn't breathe much. The cold in the basement got through my socks and ankles. I could hear the rain through the window well like a steady hiss. Patel opened a shallow drawer under the desk. Inside were printed call logs with prepaid numbers at the top. The numbers matched the first 3 digits in James' notebook. There were screenshots of text conversations that began with emergency prompts. Neighbor reports loud noise at 122 Main. Possible power surge at 118 Main. Woman at 120 Main alone during outage. The messages were sent to the same dispatch address you can use for non-voice reporting. Each had a timestamp that matched the times on the binder. Then Patel lifted a small external hard drive out of the drawer. He looked at James and then at me. "Do you have a laptop with battery power?" he asked. "Upstairs. It may have enough." We went back up. The house felt tight and watched, even with the cameras down. I set my laptop on the dining table and turned it on. It had 31% battery. Patel connected the drive with a cable from his pocket and opened the first folder. Each folder was a date. Inside there were video clips, each labeled by time and camera. Stairs, 2043. Living, 2050. The video thumbnail showed the view from the stair camera. Night vision green. The outline of a person, me, going down with a flashlight, the beam bouncing. Another file showed me in the living room lighting a candle and bending close to the match. Another showed me sitting, waiting, looking at the door. Each clip was 10 to 30 seconds. Some had audio. When I played one, I could hear my own breathing. I could hear the knock from a prior night. I could hear the landline ringing. James stopped the video and looked at me. "We will need to take this," she said. "Do I have your consent?" "Yes," I said. My hands were cold. I folded them together and kept them still on the table. "What is this?" I asked. "Who else has access to this house?" she asked instead of answering. "Only Evan and me. We don't have a cleaner. We don't loan the key." "Has your husband ever worked with emergency services, security, testing, any job requiring drills?" I used to brag that I could hard test any system, I said, but he works in software. He makes dashboards and scripts, not this. My phone buzzed on the table. "Evan, how are you holding up? Power should be back soon. Don't worry." I stared at the message. James wrote the time in her notebook. "May I text him?" I asked. "Go ahead." I sent it. 3 dots appeared again, then stopped. At 9:19 p.m., the power came back. The lights blinked, the router whirred. The TV lit with a blue screen, and then a channel. The house jumped a little, like it had been sleeping. James unplugged the TV. "Let's keep non-essential devices off for now." "Can you show me identification again?" I asked. She did. I took a photo. She didn't object. Dispatch called my cell phone at 9:22 p.m. "I'm connecting you with Detective Jansen," the operator said. A man came on the line. "Mrs. Hart, this is Detective Jansen. Officers are with you." "Yes." "Your husband is on his way to your address. We'd like you to remain inside. If he arrives, do not confront him. Officers will speak to him first." "How do you know he's coming?" I asked. "We attempted phone contact. He sent a message to you at 9:18 p.m. He's 5 minutes out." I swallowed. I could feel a dull pulse in the palms of my hands where I had pressed them together. "Okay."
James and Patel stepped to the front door and looked through the window blinds. They did not turn on the porch light. The house was bright again, but the light felt harsh and wrong. I could see every smudge on the counter. I could see where the candle had left wax on the plate. A car pulled in. Not Evan's work car, his regular sedan. He walked to the door with his key in his hand and his shoulders squared like every other night at 9:27 when he came home. James opened the door before he could put in the key. "Evening, sir," she said. "Officer James, we need to speak with you." He looked past her at me. He did not look confused. He looked like he had reached a checkpoint earlier than planned. "What's this?" he asked, but his voice didn't carry surprise. Patel asked him to step back onto the porch. They spoke low. James asked if he knew about the devices in the basement. He said no. She asked if he had purchased prepaid phones. He said lots of people do, for work. She asked about the binder. He said he didn't know what she meant. She asked where he had been every night in the binder entries. He said, at work. She asked for his supervisor's number. He gave one. Patel called it and listened. He nodded, then shook his head, then kept listening. He asked one question and listened again. He ended the call and put his phone in his pocket. "Sir," James said, "we have reason to believe you've staged multiple false emergency calls and recorded your wife and this property without her consent. We need to ask you some questions downtown." Evan looked at me again. He started to say my name and then closed his mouth. His jaw moved once, the way it moves when he is deciding if he will smile or not. He didn't. "Am I under arrest?" he asked. "You're being detained for questioning," James said. He lifted his hands a few inches. Not a surrender, more like a display. She guided him toward the walkway. Patel followed. They did not use handcuffs in front of me. The porch light was still off. The rain was lighter. The car door opened and closed. The car moved away, without a siren. I stood in the doorway until I was cold. Then I shut the door and locked it and turned the deadbolt, even though I knew he had a key and a remote and plans that didn't care about small locks. I walked to the basement and stood in front of the cavity in the wall with the small desk. The power had returned to the relay. The tiny green LED was back. I unplugged it. I unplugged the DVR. I unscrewed the cameras and put them in a paper grocery bag like they were dishes I was giving away. Upstairs, I opened the binder and read a page from a week ago. Scenario: silence. No forced event. He had noted when I looked at the door, when I checked the stove twice, when I leaned my head against the fridge. There was no reason written. There was no goal. Just data. I turned to the last page. There was no title. It had a space for scenario and subject, but nothing filled in. Below that, one line. What does she do when she knows? I closed the binder and called my sister. I told her the bare facts. I did not add any theory or metaphor. I said there were devices and logs and police had taken a drive. I said Evan was being questioned. She said she would come in the morning. She asked if I wanted her now. I said no. I could sit in the light for a while. I could look at every room and know where each glow came from. The detective called at midnight. "We're holding him," he said. "We need to organize a warrant for the property and for his devices. Do you consent to officers securing the basement equipment for now?" "Yes," I said. My voice sounded normal. "Take whatever you need." "Do you feel safe staying there tonight?" he asked. "I will," I said. I changed the code on the alarm. "Get some rest, if you can." I didn't, really. I sat at the dining table with the flashlight on the placemat even though the lights were back. I made a list in a notebook, because a list is simple. Call a locksmith. Call a lawyer. Freeze our joint credit account. Give the police full consent. Take the binder to the station. Replace the landline number. Remove the wall cavity door. Ask the electrician to inspect every wire and junction. At 2:14 a.m., I walked to the window. It had fogged again from the heat in the room against the cool outside. I pressed my thumb to the glass and made a small, clear oval. The street was empty. The houses looked like boxes. Most lights were off. Mine were on. In the morning, when the officers came with a technician, they packed the relay, the DVR, the phones, the binder. Patel gave me a property receipt. James handed me a card with her cell written in pen. "Call any time," she said. When they left, I removed the landline handset from the base and put it in a kitchen drawer. I made coffee. I watched the kettle because it was a thing that did one job clearly. I drank it at the table where the binder had been. The table had a faint rectangle where the lantern had sat. I left it there for a week before I cleaned it. I wanted to see it, until I didn't. I think most people want to know. What did he want? Control is the easy word. Proof is another. Maybe he wanted to see the world do what he told it to do in small ways. Lights off, phone rings, knock, record. He wrote it down like he could frame me in bullet points. He forgot that plans can show you the planner more than the subject. I replaced the breaker panel door. I had the relay mounting holes filled and painted. I installed my own battery lanterns in a box by the door. I keep a crank flashlight on the nightstand. When the power goes out, now it's just dark. No schedule, no test. I light a candle because I choose to, not because someone else flipped a switch and wrote a line about it. At 10:12 p.m., the house went dark again. TV dead, router lights gone, windows fogged in under a minute. From the hallway, my husband called, "Protocol! Away from the glass, phone in the metal box." If you're listening during a blackout, keep a light handy and trust your gut. For more, subscribe and share. Then check what's normal in your house. My name is Julia. We live on a short street in Maple Ridge, a place with identical mailboxes and weekend lawn crews. My husband, Nolan, has a way of making rules sound like love. After a few package thefts in the neighborhood and a slashed tire on my car, he started calling it protection. Blackout curtains, new locks every month, motion sensors, quiet hours after 10, when he flipped the main breaker to keep us off the radar. He bought a small metal box for our phones. Faraday, he said. If someone's tracking us, this blocks it. At first, I laughed and went along. Then the outages got regular. Tuesdays and Fridays, always late. The generator he bought stayed covered and never ran. He said fuel was too expensive unless the grid really fails. That night, I was in the kitchen rinsing mugs when the power died again. The microwave clock blinked out. The window near the sink clouded with condensation. The air went quiet in a way I'm used to now. Nolan's voice came from the hall, even and practiced. Protocol, Jules, lights out, phones boxed. I said, "It's the 5th time this month." "Security breach uptick," he said, like he was reading a report. "Inside." I put a candle on a plate and lit it. I didn't put my phone in the box. It had 12% battery and a weak signal, but it was something. I opened the Notes app and typed, "Stop turning off the main at 10:12, and saved it. I wanted proof for myself. Time, habit, pattern. He moved through the dark with a flashlight, shutting blinds that were already closed, double-checking deadbolts. He carried the metal phone box under his arm. "Phone," he said, holding out his hand. "I'm timing contractions," I said, lying with the calm I learned over the last 6 months. "You're not pregnant," he said, automatic, then stopped. I watched the pause register. He smiled, but it wasn't warm. "Fine, keep it on airplane mode." I went to the basement to get a second candle. He doesn't like me down there. Spiders, he says. There are no spiders, just storage. On the way down, I passed the breaker panel. The main was flipped off. Beside it, a small gray relay with a stubby antenna and a green LED. The label said, "Remote Test Relay." Nolan had installed it a month ago. He told me it was a surge protector. Past the panel is a shelving unit with paint cans, holiday boxes, and old books. One box was new, a black ballistic-looking case with a coded latch. The code was our anniversary, which made me sick to realize I guessed right. Inside were 2 passports with Nolan's photo under different names, a wad of cash, a prepaid phone in its plastic, and a laminated card. If asked, "We have a stalker from work.
We rotate locks for safety. We keep power off at night to deter tracking. Do not give last name to neighbors. There was a second card, Go List. Cash, meds, USB, Faraday pouch, passports. The USB drive was caped under the lid. I took it and went back upstairs like I had only a candle. Nolan was at the front window, checking the street with his flashlight turned off, like he thought someone could see light bleed under the shades. "What are you looking for?" I asked. "Patterns," he said. I went to my desk, opened my laptop, 64% battery, and plugged in the USB. Folders opened. IDs, reports, court. In court, there was a PDF with a mugshot of Nolan with a beard, dated 4 years ago, under the name Aaron West. Charges: securities fraud, bail jumping, a bench warrant. In reports were drafts of letters to himself, typed threats, cut and paste notes, "We're watching your wife," "Turn off the power and keep quiet." He had printed versions saved as proof in another folder. Photos of those notes on our porch. In a TXT file called Narrative, he had bullet points about blackouts, targeted harassment, neighbor suspicion, control intake, and this line, "Keep her home, fewer variables." It wasn't protection, it was isolation. I took a picture of the mugshot with my phone. I took a picture of the laminated "If Asked" card. I typed to my neighbor across the street, Mara, "Please call 911 quietly. Ask for a welfare check at my address. No sirens." Then I put the phone in airplane mode and slipped it in my hoodie sleeve.
Nolan came into the room. "Basement?" "Candle," I said. He nodded, then looked at the laptop. "Battery. Close it. Save it." "Why?" I asked. "Less light," he said. "Less signal." "You know that's not how it works," I said. He stared at me for a slow second. Then he looked toward the hallway, like he was listening to a cue. "We'll ride it out," he said, "and you'll thank me in the morning." At 10:26 p.m., there was a quick knock. 3 soft taps. Nolan didn't move. The peephole lit with a small battery lantern glow. "Maple Ridge Police," a calm voice said. "Welfare check." Nolan's jaw set. He whispered, "No engagement." "They'll keep knocking," I said, "or they'll come back with more." He stayed still, and I realized this was his real plan, to wait everyone out until they got bored or busy. He went to the hallway and opened the metal phone box on the console table like he was arranging props. He slid my phone out of my sleeve and into the box without looking down. I let him take it. He believed habits were the same as truth. The knock came again. "Ma'am, this is Officer Anders. Just to check in." I opened the door on the chain. 2 officers stood under the eave. Lantern low, badges up. No flashing lights. "Are you Julia?" the woman asked. "Yes." "May we step in?" I undid the chain and stepped back. Nolan stayed in the hall in the dark with his flashlight off. Anders saw him. "Sir?" "We're fine," he said. The second officer scanned the room. "Power outage." "Breakers off," I said, by choice. Anders looked at me. "Are you safe?" "Yes, but I'd like to show you something." Nolan took 1 step forward. "We don't consent to any search." "I'm showing them my property," I said. I led them to the desk, opened the laptop, and set the passport and the laminated card beside it. Anders took out her phone and photographed the screen and the documents. "Sir, can I see your ID?" she asked Nolan. He handed over a driver's license in the name we use here. Anders glanced at the laptop, then at him. Do you have any other identification? No. She radioed, gave his name and date of birth, then in a lower voice, Run alias Aaron West. Within a minute, dispatch came back. Anders looked at Nolan again, then at me. Ma'am, we're going to ask you to step into the kitchen. I did. Nolan stayed where he was. Anders spoke to Nolan about the warrant. He said it was a mistake, old paperwork, a misunderstanding from a previous life. He said the threats were real, and that he kept us safe. He talked fast. He kept his hands open. He glanced at the metal phone box, then away. They detained him. No shouting, no fight. He didn't look at me as they walked him out. The door closed softly. The porch darkened. The house was silent in a clean way. I flipped the main breaker back on. The lights returned. The windows were still fogged, but I could see the street. I emptied the metal box and put it in a donation bag. I peeled the Blackout film from one window and threw it away. I called a locksmith and scheduled a full rekeying and code change for the morning. I texted Mara thank you. I emailed the detective the USB files. I put a crank flashlight on the nightstand. When people ask later what the secret actually was, I say, he wasn't protecting me at all. He was a fugitive, hiding from everyone, including me. And he used fear and darkness to keep me quiet. He didn't need my consent, he needed my compliance. He doesn't have it anymore.